Don Knotts made people laugh, but he was sad all the time. As a child, he lived with a violent, drunk father who held knives to his throat. He would never get over this horror. He had fear attacks so bad that he could hardly do anything, even when he was getting 5 Emmys. In his last years, he had to deal with another terrible turn of events. Macular degeneration made him blind. The end. They died of lung cancer. Many people were happy because of this man, but he rarely felt happy himself. The next oldest child of Don Knotts was born 14 years before him in Morgantown, West Virginia, in 1924. It wasn't in their plans to have another child. His mom was 40, his dad was having a hard time making ends meet, and they had just lost their farm. There wasn't any money, comfort, or space for a new baby. Don slept on a cot in the kitchen, while his brothers shared a room with strangers who paid rent so the family could stay alive. He didn't have any privacy or room of his own. There was only noise, stress, and the cold reality that they were just barely getting by. He was weak and small. He always wore used clothes that didn't fit right. At school, kids made fun of him. Things were worse at home. His father, William, was mentally ill, drunk, and almost blind. He was mean and unreliable most days, and he slept on the couch. He was in the way of Don getting to the door. His father would sometimes point a knife at him. Every day and every hour, Don was scared. He said, "I felt like a loser one time. Most of the time I was sad." His father passed away when he was 13. Even though it was sad, Don felt like a weight had been lifted off his chest. Fear didn't go away though. He had 3 older brothers who turned mean because they grew up in better times. They drank a lot, fought a lot, and sometimes they got mad at Don. They thought he was weak and not useful. Shadow, one of the brothers, was different. Laughed. He made fun of her. He made Don's dark world a little brighter. Don lost the only person in his family who had ever made him laugh when Shadow died of an asthma attack. Since Don had no one to lean on, he felt alone. He made up friends in his head. He made up stories in his head. That's how he dealt with it. That's when he learned ventriloquism. He made a fake person named Danny and began acting at schools, churches, and other public events. He was only 15 years old. It wasn't just for fun, it was a way out. People clapped for him for the first time, not for his family or the fake, but just for him. In New York, he tried his luck but failed. He went back to his home state and started at West Virginia University. First there was World War II. When he was 19, he was called up in 1943. People thought he was a Marine who taught drills. That story was not true. Don wasn't made to fight. He was too skinny and scared. He was sent by the Army to the 6,817th Special Services Battalion to amuse the troops. Did a variety show for the troops called Stars and Gripes while I was abroad. As he went from island to island, he helped keep the spirits up. He used his fake Danny Hooch Matador. At first, Don had been ventriloquism since he was a child, but something changed after 2 years of it. He started to get angry. His jokes made more people laugh than his own. Danny kept taking over the show, even though it was meant to be his. Someone else on stage, Al Checo, could also see it. A piece of wood was making Don tired of being second fiddle. In 1945, everything was different. Don was on a ship going across the South Pacific on his way back to the United States. He took the fake and threw it overboard one night. Don later said that he thought the dummy was screaming like it was living as it sank, but he wasn't sorry about it. It was like cutting a chain at that moment. He was no longer going to hide behind a dummy. As himself, he was going to make people laugh. When I got back home in January 1946, I went back to West Virginia University. He went to school thanks to the GI Bill. He studied theater, played in college plays, and began to develop the tense, jittery persona that would become his trademark. It was just him this time. There's no fool, just Don Knotts. Some people became aware. He met a woman named Catherine Metz while he was in school. They were very different from each other. She was calm and thoughtful. She was also going to marry someone else. Don didn't back down though. He went after her. It worked in some way. They got married in 1948. Don got his degree in acting that same year. Don Knotts left West Virginia in 1948 with a degree in acting and a $100 loan. He was only 24. A simple dream of his was to become an actress. He took a bus to New York City, thinking that the fact that he had entertained soldiers during the war would help him get a job. New York didn't care though. He got chewed up by the city. He tried out for radio jobs one after the other. They didn't just turn him down. They ignored him too. Someone from Morgantown who was skinny and shaky wasn't known what to do by the staff. At the same time, he married Kay Metz. While the bills were coming in, people lost faith. He almost gave up, but the same army ties that helped him get a part in the war also saved his life. He slowly found work. It wasn't exciting, but it was something. In 1953, he got a part on Search for Tomorrow, a national TV soap opera that made everything different. He played Wilbur Peterson, who wasn't funny and was just a scarred, nervous person who wouldn't talk to anyone but his sister. Don had to look deep into his own past to bring Wilbur to life. He grew up poor with a mentally ill father. He didn't give up, even though it was heavy. In 2 years he was in about 500 shows. He kept going even though he was tired or worried. Casting directors paid attention to him after that part. It also got him to Broadway very quickly for Sergeants, where he met Andy Griffith. He also got a small part on the kids' show Howdy Doody around the same time, in 1954. Millions of people watched it. That's where something worked. He was a figure named Tim Tremble, who was very twitchy. Kids laughed at that crazy, tense energy and adults took notice. What began as a silly child's part turned into a practice run for the role that would make him famous. He wasn't just acting nervous, he was nervous and funny about it. It wasn't easy being behind the camera. Don was very worried about his health. He always thought he was sick, even when doctors told him he wasn't. He would wake up sure that he had something very bad. His mind made his body do something, having panic episodes, shaking and stomach problems. It all started with a deep fear as a child. Now that fear was back, it was mixed with the stress of being in show business. The doctors gave him pills to calm him down. Most of the pills were barbiturates and early tranquilizers. The year was 1950. That was how things usually were. Soon though, he only needed them to get through a scene. He did Howdy Doody and Search for Tomorrow at the same time. People are laughing, but he was really breaking down inside. He forgot lines sometimes. He didn't seem like himself every day. Director saw it and found a way to work around it. At the end of the day, he always came through. However, the drugs made him less sharp off screen and made it harder for him to control his feelings. Before 1956, Don Knotts was just another actor who was having a hard time. He got a big break when he joined the Steve Allen Show and played the strange, fidgety man. But this wasn't just something that came to mind. There was a man in West Virginia who was shaking so badly that he spilled water all over himself, which Don saw. That picture stayed in his mind. After many years, he dreamed about it again. He got up, wrote down the stunt, and then made it into a hilarious joke. America soon knew what he looked like. Don kept going on the show from 1956 to 1959. Don then moved to Hollywood with The Tonight Show in 1959. The person followed him. Still, this wasn't his first big moment with a future star. Don got the part of Sergeant in 1955 in a play called No Time for Sergeants. It was there that he met Andy Griffith. Even though Don was only a small part, they got along. They really got along, even though they didn't spend much time on stage together. Don had just done his time in the military at the time. He put on a show called Stars and Gripes during the war where he was a ventriloquist and made people laugh. He went to school and tried to make it in show business after the war. No Time for Sergeants was made into a movie in 1958, and Don was in it. He played the same part on stage with Andy Griffith again. It was his first movie, and it made a difference. The movie made more than $7.6 million at the theaters, a lot of money at the time. He and Andy talked a lot on set. They did more than just act, they talked about their thoughts. By not being clear, Don learned how to be funny. That thought. He was stuck with being the worried wreck who thinks he's in charge. He would use it as his brand. Then the call that changed everything came out of nowhere. The date was February 15, 1960. As Don watched TV at home, he saw Andy Griffith as a small-town sheriff on the Danny Thomas Show. That was the first episode of the show that would become Andy Griffith. Don called Andy right away when he picked up the phone. It had been almost 3 years since they last talked. Don asked, "But don't you think Sheriff Andy Taylor should have a deputy?" There was no agency, no interview, just a random call and a crazy thought. Andy liked it though. He made plans for them to meet with producer Sheldon Leonard. Don's job with Steve Allen was ending at the same time, just the right time. Don got the job in just a few weeks. Barney Fife then showed up. A lot of people think that Barney was just Don acting nervous again, but it wasn't that easy. Don changed him. Even though Barney was shaky, he wasn't scared. He was also cocky, loud, and sure of himself. He spoke as if he knew everything. He really didn't know that much. Barney worked because of that difference. They thought Andy would be funny, and Don would be the straight man at first. Andy saw something in the second show though. He told the group, "Don should be the funny one, and I'll be the serious one." That moment turned the show around. It took everything Don had to give to Barney. He had a gun in his pocket, and talked, and walked in a certain way. He also got angry with Thelma Lou, and Andy a lot. Everything was done with care. Don made a partner that could have been silly into one of the most famous TV characters ever. Both the fans and the reviewers couldn't get enough of him. It was 3 straight years for Don Knotts, from 1961 to 1963. Not as the main player, but as a supporting one. But he really became the show's heart. I'll never forget his big eyes, his crazy voice, and the way his hands would shake whenever something went wrong. It could have been a small part, but he made it into one of the most famous TV parts of all time. The one bullet rule is still remembered. People didn't trust Barney to load his own gun. He had to keep that one bullet in his shirt pocket, because Andy told him to. It was still possible for Barney to shoot the roof by chance. He would always look sad, hand over the gun, and walk away like a kid who got in trouble. That kind of funny stuff didn't need words. It was real, pure, and eternal. Don always got it right. He wasn't just stupid though. From judo to song to American history, he thought he knew a lot about everything. When things didn't go his way, he'd really fall apart. He'd stand tall and act like a big deal. When he tried too hard, his singing was terrible. But when he sang softly with Andy, it was strangely sweet. Don handled all of those highs and lows with ease. Then the surprise came. Don quit in 1965, just as things were getting better, because Andy told him so. He thought the show would end after 5 seasons. Don signed a movie deal with Universal. He agreed to be in 5 movies. But all of a sudden, Andy changed his mind. There would be more shows. Don wasn't able to return. He was locked up already. That hurt his heart. He didn't want to go, but he had to. It was put into the show that Barney would leave. He moved to Raleigh, a raise and a job in a big city. But fans still felt like there was a gap. Many people thought it would never be the same without him, even though the show went on until 1968. Then Don came back as a guest for a few shows in 1966 and 1967. But the screen lit up again when he was there. He walked right back into Mayberry like he had never been away. Also, guess what? For those short shows, he won 2 more Emmys. That made it 5 for him now. It took 5 Emmys for a single part. Nothing like that has ever been done by a minor player in a comedy. Don wore the badge one last time in 1986. After many years, the group got back together when they went back to Mayberry. Not as fast or as young, but still magical. It didn't seem like time had passed when Barney Fife came back on TV. As of 1964, Don Knotts was no longer a TV partner. He was the star of a strange little movie called The Incredible Mr. Limpet. It was a mix of cartoons and real life. He played a quiet man who was crazy about fish and turned into a talking fish who helped the Navy find Nazi subs. It may sound silly, but it kind of worked. Not a huge hit at the box office, making what would be about $35.7 million today, but it showed something important. Don Knotts was good enough to carry a movie by himself. Don did something brave that same year. He thought that the Andy Griffith Show was coming to an end, so he signed a deal with Universal Studios to be in 5 movies. The show didn't end though, and Andy Griffith kept going without him. Don wasn't able to return. He had to make the movie. It turned out that choice was the beginning of something big. The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, his first movie for Universal, came out in 1966 and did very well at the box office. It took about $670,000 to make something that earned at least 5 times that amount. It came in at number 34 at the box office, and made an estimated $100.1 million altogether. Because he did so well, Universal locked him up for 5 years. After that, Don had a run. In The Reluctant Astronaut 1967, he played a man who was afraid of heights but was forced to join the space program. The movie had real NASA video in it, but it came out just 2 days before the terrible Apollo 1 fire, which made people forget about it. After that, in 1968, The Shakiest Gun in the West came out. It was a copy of an old Bob Hope comedy. Once more it worked fine. Not huge hits, but steady moneymakers. People in the South and Midwest really liked him. New York critics didn't pay much attention to him, but people in small towns always came to see him. After that, Don did something different in 1969. In The Love God, he played a Hugh Hefner-like character who runs a racy magazine. It was a strange choice. People didn't buy it. Taking everything into account, the movie bombed, making only $15.4 million. Don tried to change how people saw him, but it didn't work. He told the Chicago Tribune in 1970 that he didn't understand what people wanted. He was afraid that people would get tired of seeing him play the same nervous role over and over. How to Frame a Fig, which came out in 1971, was his last movie under the Universal deal. It also didn't do well. It made an improved $21.6 million and came in 86th for the year. The company chose not to continue the deal after 5 years. Hollywood was quick to change. New films with a lot of edge, like The Graduate, Easy Rider and Midnight Cowboy, changed the rules, and Don's clean comic style didn't work anymore. He wasn't sure what to do next because he was 47 years old and ending his movie career. That wasn't the end though. In 1979, the hit series Three's Company had to find a new place to rent. Don was called in because the old ones were moving for a spin-off. The group was tense at first. John Ritter said that they were scared of Knotts because he was already so well known. When the cameras came out though, everyone could see that Don had brought something special. His new role, Ralph Furley, was loud, showy, and always full of himself, especially when he was with women. That's what made it funny though. He thought he was smooth, but he never really did. It wasn't just the jokes either. Many people liked the way he looked. The clothes Mr. Furley wore were crazy. Men wore bright outfits, big collars, and big askets. It was pure 1970s crazy, but those clothes went well with the energy Don brought to the part. People laughed as soon as he walked into a room because he made funny faces and moved like a cartoon dog. When Suzanne Summers quit the show in 1981, the writers began to make fun of Don more. He stayed on the show until it finished in 1984, when his role became even more important. Don didn't go away after that. In 1987, he was in another comedy, this time as a school director for the rest of the season. After a year, he went back to work with Andy Griffith on Matlock, just like before. He also did voice work, and in the new Scooby-Doo movies, there was a cartoon version of him. In 1970, he even had his own music show that didn't last long. Back then, if you watched TV, you might have seen him as a guest star on shows like Here's Lucy or The Bill Cosby Show. But there was a very serious story behind the humor. Don had a rough life. His dad, Jesse, had a lot of mental health issues and was known to drink a lot. He would sometimes take a knife, hold it to young Don's neck, and yell that he was going to kill him. It happened more than once. Later, when Don was an adult, his mother asked him, "Do you remember when you were a baby, and your dad had a knife to your throat?" In the end, Jesse was sent to a mental hospital twice. Don didn't start to feel free until he died when he was only 13. Since then he's been more honest, tried to be funny, and built the character that would make him famous one day. The scars didn't go away though. Karen, Don's daughter, said that he changed moods a lot. He had sadness for many years. He was stuck in his own thoughts and couldn't get out of them. He often didn't feel good enough, even when he was doing well. He once told a reporter that he felt like a fool. "Most of the time I was sad. I didn't like my size, and we were poor. Things never really went away, even though he had made it." His brother-in-law said that Don never felt good enough, even though people loved him. The laughs, the fame, and the awards. That didn't make the pain from his youth go away totally. Behind the smile, the fear, sadness, and self-doubt were always there. In 1979, Don Knotts was on top of the world. It was his first day on the hit show Three's Company, where he played the strange owner Ralph Furley and made millions of people laugh. But behind the scenes, when he heard bad news, everything changed. He was losing his sight. Don was only 57 years old when he was told he had macular degeneration. He wasn't good at reading lines. He had trouble recognizing people. It became dangerous to even drive. But this wasn't just a health problem for a man whose big eyes had made him famous. It was a bad dream. He was quiet at first. He was falling apart on the inside though. He shut down, got sad, and had bad moods. His wife Laura Lee said he was hooked on doing everything he could before he lost his sight for good. He changed into a different person. His daughter Karen could even see how weak he had become. People around him didn't know what to expect, because his moods changed so quickly, she said. He couldn't get out of bed for days because he was so scared and had bad thoughts. He would get scared before scenes on set, and sometimes lock himself in his changing room. Having trouble seeing made his nervousness even worse. He had had this problem since he was a child. As if from nowhere there was a flash of hope. He was offered a new type of surgery on his eyes around 1982. It was a trial, and could be dangerous. Don did something risky, and it paid off. He didn't get perfect vision back, but it got better enough that he could go back to work. He felt better. He was living. He joked again for a while. He smiled even more. He even told the New York Times that someone who was blind would give up everything to see the way he did. But the harm was already done. During those years his wife couldn't handle the chaos. Laura Lee, his second wife, had given him time. But from 1979 to 1983, she saw her husband change into someone she could not recognize. There was always worry in his mind. He always talked about his health. He wouldn't go to therapy, even though she begged him to. Things kept getting tense. Their friends said the couple fought more and more. Laura Lee finally left. As soon as she filed for divorce, that part of Don's life was over. She stopped being famous after the breakup, and never talked about the pain she felt in public again. Don got hit again just as things looked like they were getting better. He had lung cancer at this point in the early 2000s. It was a cruel irony. It had been years since he quit smoking, but the damage was already done. At first he didn't tell anyone, not even his kids. He was worried that he would lose his job if people found out. It was already in both lungs though. Don, being Don, still found a way to laugh about it. When Don's doctor told him the news, he told a joke. That's what he was. He wanted to make people happy even as he was dying. A lot of artists had stopped working by the time they were 81, but Don Knotts was still working. In 2005, he did the role of Mayor Turkey Lurkey in Disney's Chicken Little. It was his first Disney job in many years. Even more amazing was the fact that he was almost blind at the time. He kept going, even though both of his eyes had macular degeneration. He didn't end there. He showed up on that 70s show one last time in real life, in a role based on the silly figure he made famous on Three's Company. At the same time he did the voice of Wormy in the animated show Hermie and Friends. He also taped one last part as a dog named Sniffer in Air Buddies, which came out after he died. Don Knotts never stopped acting, even as his health got worse. The first show he did was in 1941, and even after 65 years, he was still making people laugh. Don's last years were even more touching, because his best friend Andy Griffith was there with him. They worked together on the Broadway show No Time for Sergeants in 1955, which is where they met. They were just two boys from the South who wanted to make it in show business. For that one job, they became friends for life. After many years, when Andy Griffith hosted The Andy Griffith Show, he changed everything so Don could be the funny one. They were that close. Andy didn't stay away when Don got sick either. He flew in to the hospital one last time to see him. He was more than just a co-star, he was like family. A man who used to be